Good morning. You guys awake? It's a new year. We are going to jump into the idea of this series, talking about one of the things that we're kind of fascinated with as people. And it happens in particular around this time of the season, or this time of year for us. It's this idea of new. Have you ever noticed how fascinated we are with something that's new? It's like there's this excitement. Like we just got through Christmas and your kids probably opened a bunch of presents. There was new clothes and new toys, maybe some new tech gear. And there's all this excitement and all this luster and all this fanfare around this idea of new. Have you ever installed anything new in your house? One of the first houses my wife and I owned, we put some new carpet in. And when the new carpet goes in, you're just, at least as owners, fascinated with the idea of new carpet. It's like, look how nice it looks. And when you like vacuum the carpet, you vacuum it so there's nice straight lines. And you can tell, like it's so plush and so fluffy, you can tell when someone walks on the carpet. And you maybe even catch stuff, you're so fascinated with this idea of new. It's like, who walked on the carpet? I can see the footprints. And then there's crumbs, and you run over and you vacuum up the crumbs, and God forbid anybody spills anything on the carpet. You pull out your shampooer and you shampoo it quick. And it's like, guys, no eating on the carpet, no playing on the carpet, definitely no roughhousing. You're going to wear out the fibers. You know what? Let's just not walk on the carpet. Let's just look at the carpet. Then a few years go by, and it's worn, and it's kind of graying, and it's kind of lost its luster. It doesn't have that new carpet smell anymore, and somebody spills a whole cup of Starbucks on the table, like, we'll get it later. Right? There's something about this idea of new. You see this with new cars too. Maybe it's not even a brand new car. It's new to you, right? It's got like 50 or 60,000 miles on it, but it's new to you. And when you get it, your kids try to climb in. It's like, no, there's no sitting in my car. What do you mean there's no sitting in your car? All right, well, you can sit, but definitely no shoes. Shoes have to go. It's raining outside. Yeah, well, no shoes, no eating, absolutely no drinking. Like you have all these rules when it's new, and you're concerned because it's new, and we're fascinated with new. And then a few months go by, and the back seat of your car looks like the trash can at Chick-fil-A because you're just trying to keep your life together and your family in order because eventually the new wears off. This happens in other things. There's this piece of technology that came out a few years ago. You may have had one of these. I know when it came out, I was kind of fascinated with this. About 18 years ago, the Sony CyberShot came out, and this was an amazing digital camera. For those students who are here or those from like an earlier generation, this is how your parents and I took pictures. This came out, and it was a 7.2 megapixel camera. It had 3 times optical zoom. Like everyone was fascinated with how small the technology was. It could fit into your pocket, and it could take it had, I think, 56 meg of storage, which is like one photo now. But it was just an amazing piece of technology when it came out, and everyone wanted one, and it was new. And it came out in, I believe it was May. I have the date here, but it came out in May of 2006, which was pretty amazing. And it wasn't that this thing came out in May of 2006 that made it amazing, but what came out the year after that kind of wore off the new and the luster of this? You probably know where this is going. In June of 2007, a guy stood on screen named Steve and presented the very first iPhone. And while the first iPhone, when it came out, it didn't have high-def video cameras, the third generation, the iPhone 3 did. And what was new and what had all this luster, and everyone had to have one of these cameras. It could fit in your shirt pocket, and you could take it with you everywhere. And when you took enough pictures, you just needed one wire to go from the camera to the side of the computer, and you could transfer everything over. It was amazing. And then this came out, and it wasn't so amazing anymore. We didn't even need wires to transfer photos. We could just take a whole slew of photos and high-def videos and wirelessly transfer them up to YouTube or Dropbox, or wherever you wanted to store them. It made what seemed so new not so new anymore. We kind of lost our interest in it. We kind of wondered, is this thing adding any value to my life anymore? And isn't that what kind of happens with new? Like at first it's new, and it's, look at all the value it adds. We're so excited. And then after a while, it's like, but is this adding? Is this making my life any easier? Is it saving me any time? It's interesting when things like this come our way. One of the things that changes is when you kind of get excited about something, maybe it's a piece of technology or some new experience, you become so excited about what it's doing to your life. If it's saving time, if it's making your life a little easier, if it's maybe simplifying your systems in your home, and you become so excited about it, we go from not just enjoying the new thing, we become raving fans of the new thing. One of the things that hit our family recently, just the last month, is grocery orders that are delivered. Anybody experience this? Like it was a big deal a few years ago when you could order groceries and go pick them up. You could avoid some of the lines, but then after a time, the lines moved from inside to outside the store, and you would wait in lines for an hour to pick up your groceries. You don't have to do that anymore. You can just call and order groceries, and they're delivered to your house. I mean, it's amazing. I don't know about you. I'm a raving fan of this. I didn't like going to Walmart anyway. It's loud. There's lots of people. There's lines everywhere. I don't want to have to deal with that. Now I don't have to. I can place a call, and someone brings them to my front steps. I don't ever have to leave. It's amazing. And we become raving fans of this thing that becomes so amazing to us because it made a difference. We're excited. Maybe for you, it's a new restaurant. You go to, you hear a new restaurant coming up in town, and you're so excited to try it out because it's new. And what's it going to be like? Is it going to change my life? Is the food going to be amazing? And then you find out one of your friends went to the restaurant. Well, what was it? How was it? It's like, eh. You're like, eh. I don't want to hire a babysitter and go out for a few hours for eh. Like, it was just, it was all right. It's all right. And then you're rethinking, do I really want to take the time out of my life? Do I want to spend the money? Do I want to hire a babysitter to go experience? Is it kind of making a difference in my life at all? And I don't think it's going to. Then I'm going to become indifferent towards the very thing. You see, this question is a really interesting question. What difference does it make? Most of the time, this is the question we're trying to ask at the new year. Right, New Year comes around, we're putting in these New Year's resolutions. We're this idea of creating this new me or starting the year off right. We're really trying to answer the question, what difference is this thing going to make in my life? And then we want to capture the things that will make a difference. And we want to build our life around these things because that's what we want. We want things to make a difference. If you've made any New Year's resolutions, this won't come as any surprise to you. Do you know what the two most popular New Year's resolutions are every single year? So you can shout them out if you want. Lose weight, and what was the next one? I heard it's lose weight or exercise and diet. Every year. Top tier New Year's resolutions. Do you know why? Because at the beginning or the end of every year, after we've gorged ourselves on Christmas cookies and going out for the whole month of December, we realize this kind of thing will make a difference. So we get excited. We start the new year off, and I heard somebody refer to January as mega salad month. That's what it is. Everyone's eating salad. The gyms are packed. January, it's full because we think this idea is going to make a difference. And then February, the gym's less full. By March, everyone who started is now at home. You ever wonder why? It's because we do it for a few months, and then we come back to this question, is it making a difference? And it doesn't look like it. I've been working out, I've been trying to eat right, but I don't feel any different. I don't look any different. And while the evidence shows that over the course of a long period of time, it will make a difference, we don't see the difference now. So we become indifferent to the very thing that we should be excited about. We see this happen in our lives all the time. I thought it would make a difference, right? I thought eating healthy would make a difference, and I know going to the gym would make a difference, but I don't really feel like it does. But I know if I pick up my phone and I binge a few episodes of Netflix, I know what that does to me. I know how good that makes me feel. I could just flip through my scroll for 30 minutes, just browse through my feed, and yeah, it won't make a big difference in the long term of my life, but right now it's going to make me feel good. I'm done with Mega Salad Month. Have you seen the piece of cheesecake? I know what that'll get me in the long term, but I don't know that it's making a difference now. But I know what that cheesecake is going to make me feel like. We see this in our financial life all the time. We've been told for years and years and years that saving bit by bit over the course of a long period of time, after 20 or 30 years, it pays dividends. It sets us up for retirement, for a future. But right now, that new technology came out, and that new experience, and that latest vacation. And so we give up on the very things that make a difference because we can't see them making a difference now. The same is true for us of our faith. For some of us, we've been serving Jesus for a while. We've tried to follow along, and somewhere along the way, faith got a little contorted. We find ourselves asking this question, is faith making a difference in my life anymore? I've tried, and I've tried to follow, and I've tried to do the rules. When I make things wrong, I try to do things to make up for it and maybe to earn God's favor a little more. But I can't really see it making a difference. Maybe you're here and this whole idea of people being different, especially when they come to church, this is the idea that kind of pushed you away from church. It's the reason you left church or kept church at arm's length, because you knew a bunch of people who went to church every time the door opened. And then when you would talk to them or when you see them interact, when you'd spend time with them, you kind of looked at this question. You said, but I look at them and I think it's not making any difference. Faith didn't make a difference in their life at all. They're the same people I knew. They're just putting on a show. And for some of us, this is the challenge when it comes to our faith. Is faith making a difference in my life at all? The idea of this series is that nothing could really be further from the truth. That faith makes a massive difference. That today we're one of millions of churches around the world where billions of people are gathering to worship Jesus. And over the last 2,000 years, it made a significant difference over the course of humanity. Tonight, we're gathering with a bunch of people to celebrate 11 students who put their faith in Jesus and decided to be baptized. Is it making a difference? It's making a huge difference. When you come and you hear their stories of what life was like before they met Jesus, and we hear this all the time. We love celebrating baptisms here, about what life was like before they met Jesus, before they came to Ridge or met somebody through a ministry. And their life isn't like fault-free now, but they talk about what it was like then and then what it's like now that they've met Jesus and how things have changed. Is it making a difference? It's making a huge difference. Last year alone, we gave away 150 4U bags out to the houseless community. People who've been forgotten about, people who are on the sides of the roads, people who the rest of society has kind of ignored. Is it making a difference? Made a difference to them? We support ministries that are on mission to do something significant in their world. Renowned Collective is providing water, digging wells in villages in Africa where they wouldn't otherwise have any. And it's building up communities, and you're seeing communities begin to flourish because of the work that's being done there. Is it making a difference? Made a difference to them? For Students is an organization we support that was kind of birthed out of our old children's pastor here. To begin to work with high school students and teachers to help recognize when things in their life get a little twisted and things start going in a bad direction. Is it making a difference? Man, if just one teacher begins to recognize that student is headed down an unsafe road and he's able to step in, he feels equipped to step in and save that child's life, man, that makes a tremendous difference. And that's happening all around our communities, and it's happening because of people like you who are investing. They kind of look at their life and their money and think, I'm just a steward of my time, I'm a steward of my money, and I want to do something more than that. And you begin to invest into the church. These ministries are being faithfully supported, some of them birthed out of this church. Is it making a difference? The question is yes, or the answer rather is yes. But for some of us, we can hear all of this, and we can hear the stories, and we can watch the videos of baptisms, and we can hear all these things. That's great. That's great for them. And it's awesome that the houseless community has been provided for. What's happening in Africa and for students, absolutely, it makes a difference. But what about me? What about my marriage? What about my life? I'm a single adult, and I've been single for a while, and I really don't know what's happening with my life, and I just wish I had some direction. I wish that I could find the one. I'm married and I have kids and my marriage is struggling, and then you throw kids and their mess on top of it, and that's struggling, and it makes it even harder. What about me? What about my marriage? I'll give Jim when my financial life gets in order. It's a mess right now. I'd love him more if he just, and I'd love her more if she just learned to. And my kids, God's gonna have to love them. We can hear all of that and we can come back to that question and still wonder, but does it make a difference? It's like we're missing what the Apostle Paul said about us and what we just sang about earlier. In Colossians, the Apostle Paul says this, for he, referring to Jesus, for he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness. Jesus rescued us from this old place where all of the wrong, all of the sin, all of the hurt, all the pain, all the shame, all the guilt, all of that was. He said he rescued us from that darkness and he brought us into the kingdom of the Son. He loves us, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. Paul's like, I don't know how else to describe this to you, but there was this old kingdom where all of the wrong and all the pain and all the hurt and all the broken things were. And we didn't know what to do. We would try, we would work hard, we would try our best for it not to be that way, but we could never fully quite do it. But Jesus came. And he took the old away, and he brought us into something brand new. And that newness is for you. And we can read this, and we can hear these things, and we can say, yeah, but that's good for a preacher to say, and I've read that somewhere else. But Jim, I'm still feeling worn out, and I'm feeling like I'm frustrated in my faith, and I feel like my relationship with God has stalled. What difference does that make to me? That's what this whole series is about. That's why you need to come the next few weeks, so that you can find why this makes a difference. In Ephesians 4, the Apostle Paul says this. We're going to jump into our message. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, to this old way of living, to the things that kind of drug you down, to the things that made you feel like it was, maybe things in your life were meaningless, or things in your life didn't make sense. He says, you were taught with regard to your former way of life, to this old way of living, to this old self. And then he says it's being corrupted by its deceitful desires. And he gives us this idea of like something beginning to rot. You ever put like bananas on the counter? You buy bananas, you put them on the counter. We do in our family. No one eats a banana. Somehow it's like they're hidden in the corner, and everyone walks by and no one touches them. And the first few days they're nice and they're pretty and they're yellow. And then they begin to brown a little bit, and they begin to bruise a little bit. And after a few days they turn really brown. And then the next thing you know, they're not like sitting on the counter. They're kind of like squishing down. It's gross, but that's the rot, right? It's rotting. It's destroying. Paul says that's the old self. It's rotting and it's destroying. And the longer you keep that old self on you, the more it destroys and rots at this thing that's in you, this new thing that Jesus started in you. So you have to take the old self off. He says, you got to put off the old self. It's being corrupted. It's being destroyed. It's beginning to rot, and it stinks, and it's destroying this new thing that God's doing. So put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, and then be made new in the attitude of your minds, to put on the new self. You need to change perhaps the way you're thinking or the way you're seeing things. You need to change your perspective. Things somewhere along the line need to shift. We need to begin to see things differently. That when we put our faith in Jesus, this old self, this old thing, this old nature, he says that is what was, but Jesus has enabled this new thing to come about. So put on this new self. And the idea that Paul's talking about here in the first century, it's like this language of garments. Right? You have this old garment that's on, and it's beginning to rot, and it's heavy, and it's gross, and it's smelling disgusting, and fruit flies are everywhere, and it's rotting. He said, take that off and put it aside and put on this new self, this new thing that God did. Change your attitude, change the way you think, change your perspective, and begin to live in the new. See, the old, it no longer defines us. The old no longer describes us. It's no longer what we identify with. Our life is new. Paul continues, so put on the new self, which is created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. This is the new you. This is the new me. This is what it is. We've been recreated by God into a new creation, into a new nature. And when we put our faith in Jesus, we lay down the old, rotten, heavy, stinky garment, and we put on this new one that Paul says it was created to be like God. It's created to be righteous and holy. And those are really churchy words. So if you're here for the first time, you're like, I don't understand that at all. There's a lot of people who've come here for years and probably don't understand those words. They simply mean this: righteous is right living or living justly. And holy is this kind of idea of uncommon or different living. And based on the questions we asked at the beginning, isn't that what we want? Right? Common is broken marriages. Common is living broke. Common is strife in families. Common is not having any idea or purpose in our life. Paul's saying, no, God made you to be like him. To live rightly, to live an uncommon kind of life. And isn't that ultimately what we want? He's saying all of us can look different. We have to take the old off. We have to put the new on. And while it's true of us, because this has happened once we put our faith in Jesus, for many of us, we kind of walk around like we're still wearing the old. Like that old garment is still on us. And Paul's saying, no, that already happened. So take the old off, put the new on. There's still something, there's responsibility that we have to kind of walk through with this. And that responsibility isn't to somehow earn God's favor more, that somehow he would forgive us or show us more grace. That's already been done. He said, your responsibility is to not go back to the old way and to continue to live in the new way. And here's what the new way looks like. We're going to go back to his letter to the church at Colossae in Colossians 3. And he gives them kind of this definition, this description of how to live this new life. Colossians 3:9, he says this, since you have taken off your old self with its practices. And he just gets done listing a bunch of practices. I don't want to throw them up here because if I'm being honest, it's kind of gross and depressing. It's like verses 5-8. If you want to read it and be tormented, go for it. He lists a whole bunch of things like anger and lust and rage and malice and lying and bad language. I bet you didn't know that one was in there. It's in there. Paul says that's the old way of living. Like you read the list and it gets a little depressing because it's like, is he reading my mail? Like, is he describing me? Yes. And me. And all of us, because we all lived that way. That was the old way. He said it's the old way. It was the old practices. That's how you lived. But no more. Since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge and the image of its creator. I love how he says this. You put on this new self. Again, we're back to this garment language, right? You put on this new self, which is being renewed. Man, I don't know what it was like to like when I first met Jesus. Paul said, just remind yourself. Your mind, the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, it's constantly being renewed so that it never grows old. It never tarnishes. It never wears. It never rots. It's constantly being made new. So take off the old. Put on the new, which is being renewed in the knowledge, in the image of its creator. You were made in the image of God. And Paul says this is God's work of bringing you back into that image of God. The old tarnished, the old rot, the old destroyed. But behold, I'm doing something new. Here, he continues, here is the new, in this new me. Here, when we've put our faith in Jesus, when we're trusting him with our life, when we've been rescued and we're living that way, here in this newness, there's no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. He's saying in the old way of living, in this old way where we were all kind of separated by our descriptors. He said that there was Gentile or Jew. This is how you were born. You were either born a Jew, and if you weren't a Jew, you were a Gentile. And that's how you just described yourselves. These are the descriptors that were placed on you. You were either circumcised or uncircumcised. And circumcision is the process by which, I bet you thought I was going to go there. I really didn't want to start the year off that way. There's barbarian. That's a way of living. There's Scythian, which is like the worst kind of barbarian. There's slave or free. People in this century where they were either born into slavery or they were born free. He's saying, these are all the descriptors that used to define you, but no more, because now Christ is in all, or Christ is all, and he is in all. Now you've been defined by something brand new. That was the old. That's no longer you. He continues, therefore, in light of what is now true of you, in light of the fact that you've been made new, that you are now defined by Christ living in you. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved. It's like he has to remind them, God, you are God's chosen people. And maybe you feel a little like they do. Like, I don't feel like God's chosen person. I don't feel dearly loved. Listen, but you are. The minute you put your faith in Jesus, the minute you begin to trust him, Paul said it's almost like God chose you. It's almost like God saw where you were and knew there was nothing you could do to fix the situation you were in. So God had to do something. And God loved you enough. You were his dearly loved. You were chosen and dearly loved by God. It may not be the way you see you, but it is the way that God sees you. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself. Language talk again. This is the garment language. With compassion, with kindness, with humility, with gentleness, with patience. Paul's saying, here's what I want you to do. I want you to lay that old self down, and I want you to put on the new self that's clothed in compassion and kindness, in humility and gentleness, and patience. It's like he's creating the antithesis of that first list. The first list that all of us read, and we're like, I don't like that list because it's like he's defining me. He said, yeah, that was the old. But here's the new. And here's your responsibility. It's not to somehow earn God's favor. It's not to somehow earn more forgiveness. It's to put on the new self and to live with more compassion, to live with more kindness, with more humility. I want you to clothe yourself in these things. And as we begin to follow Jesus in this journey, although things may not feel new all the time, and things may feel a little frustrated, and we may wonder, where is God at in all this? As we continue to follow Jesus, he continues to lead us down the path of showing more compassion. So you end up in positions in your relationships where you're feeling so frustrated and overwhelmed, and all you can think of doing is like letting go of your anger and your rage. But we submit ourselves to Jesus, and he leads us to more quickly, more often, more fully be compassionate. It's like there's times in our relationships where we find ourselves just lacking kindness. But as we choose to follow Jesus, he leads us to kindness more fully, more quickly, more often. In moments where we're tempted to be prideful, our name hasn't been mentioned enough on social media, so we're going to get out there. We're going to drop our name a little bit, or things around the office. Something good happened and you didn't get the recognition, so you're going to make sure you put your name out there to get that recognition. In those moments where you feel pride beginning to bubble up to the surface, following Jesus will lead us to humility more often, more fully. Same is true for gentleness and patience. As we follow him, he shows up in these areas of our lives. It's like we follow him and we put this new cloth on, this new garment, this new jacket. And we begin to live as Jesus gives us guidance. And so when it comes to the question that we asked at the beginning, what's the difference? The main difference for us is this, that following Jesus leads to a new you. Following Jesus leads us all to a new me. And isn't that the way we want to start? Isn't that how we want to step into this new year as we talk about all these resolutions? New year, new me. Following Jesus is the best place to start. The old will go away, the old way of living. Behold, all things are made new. And in the moment when we change our mind, in the moment when we put our faith in Jesus, he empowers us, he motivates us to begin to put on the new self. New behaviors, new attitudes, new emotions, new beliefs, the way we view the world, the way we treat people, the way we handle our finances, what we do with our time. We put our faith in Jesus, and things immediately don't feel like they've changed. But it's a journey. And the journey begins when we put our faith in Jesus. And if we're being honest, it doesn't end until one day we see him again in heaven. But from now till then, we put off the old and we put on the new. And we follow Jesus. And we don't live like the way we used to. We live in this new way. If you've been following Jesus for decades, you've gone through life, you've bumped into this over time. There's an era in your life where you feel like I don't know, like it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's changed. It doesn't feel brand new. It kind of feels a little old to me. Perhaps we need to take off what was old and put on the new. Something has changed. We are a new creation. The old is gone. The new is here. And if you can begin to change your mind, if you can begin to change your perspective, the way you see things, the way you see the world, then we can begin to live as though things are new. But it's going to take a mind shift. There was one of the most famous sports trades made in the history of the world with baseball. Happened in December 26, 1919. If you're a baseball fan, you know this. I was not a huge baseball fan. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, never liked baseball, and then I moved to Boston. And I became a Red Sox fan because if you're in Boston, you have to be a Red Sox fan. In December 26 of 1919, one of the most famous trades happened. They traded George Herman Ruth. You probably know him as Babe Ruth. From the Boston Red Sox to the New York Yankees. And this is the contract they actually signed. What's really incredible about this contract is not what happened leading up to the contract, but what happened after. Up until that point, Red Sox were like the most winning team. I think they won 7 of the last 19 World Series. And then they made this trade to the New York Yankees, who hadn't won any at this point. And as a Red Sox fan, it feels really awesome to say that the Yankees hadn't won any World Series. They hadn't won any up to this point. And then they make this trade. And it really wasn't even a trade. They kind of sold him off to the Yankees. And then something happened that changed the Red Sox forever. For the next 86 years, they didn't win one World Series. They went to the World Series a few times, and every time they'd go, something would happen, something would mess up, and they'd end up losing. But the Yankees went on to win 27 World Series. It's wild. On that night, December 26, Harry Frazee, the owner of the Red Sox, signed this contract and essentially sold Babe Ruth for a high price to the Yankees for about $125,000. The moment that was signed, Babe Ruth went from being a Red Sox to a New York Yankee. But he didn't feel it. Right? Nothing for him had changed except the hat he wore. He knew Boston. He knew the places to go. He knew the stadium. He knew the entrances. He had friends. He had fans. He knew which entrance to walk into and to leave to avoid fans. He knew what were the streets and the layout. He knew the best restaurants to go, the best place to grab a cannoli. He knew all of that in Boston. He was familiar with that life. That was his way of living. And in a moment, something changed. He was no longer a Red Sox. He was a Yankee. He didn't have any friends, maybe acquaintances in New York, but no real friends. He didn't know the stadium. He didn't know the entrances to use and not use. He wasn't familiar with the streets. He didn't know the places to go. But in a moment, something happened. And he was changed. He didn't feel it. And it would take time for him to live it and kind of walk it out. But eventually, he would become a Yankee. Guys, the same is true of our faith. In a moment, we put our faith in Jesus, and maybe you don't feel brand new. Maybe it feels like nothing changes. But something significant changed, and it made a huge difference. And you may not recognize it right now, but over the course of time, as you continue to live, as you continue to follow Jesus, things begin to change. But it requires us to view things differently. We've got to continue to wake up every day and put off the old and put on the new and follow Jesus. Just like Babe Ruth, we were purchased with a high price. There's nothing we could have done to make God love us more, to earn God's favor or forgiveness anymore. It came at a steep price. It came at the price of Jesus giving his life for us, hanging on a cross to pay for our sins, to pay for that old life so that we could be forgiven and have a new life. For God so loved you that he saw what you were in. He saw your practices. He saw your old way and said, I have to do something about it. There's nothing you can do. And we try. We do, don't we? We try. We work really hard to fix things, but it never feels like it's fully or wholly fixed. And God said, I'll do that. And he sent his son, who died for you and who died for me, and rose again 3 days later to provide that forgiveness, that new way of living for you. Because that's the offer of salvation. That's the beginning of the new for you. There aren't other rules and stipulations. It's not like here's a book. Good luck following all the rules. We'll catch up with you in a few years. Jesus said, all you have to do is trust this thing that I've already done for you. I've taken away the old, and I've provided for you the new. Do you want that? Maybe you're here this morning, and this is the first time you've heard something like this. Somebody dragged you to church. It was the first Sunday of the new year. You know, new year, new me. Maybe this is the best place for you to start. In a moment, I'm going to say a prayer, and I'm going to ask if you want to start here. If you're tired of the old, if you're tired of that way of living where it felt like I could never fully, finally satisfy what I've wanted out of my life, then let me say, here's the offer from Jesus. Trust in me. Trust in what I've done for you. Let's get rid of the old. Behold, all things are new. Maybe you've been here for a while, or you've been at church, you've tried to follow Jesus, you've gone for a while, you've gone to small groups, you've served on ministry teams, but it just doesn't feel new anymore. Maybe this morning you just need that reminder of what it looks like to feel new, to walk in that compassion and that kindness and that humility. Maybe you needed the reminder that perhaps you've gone back and you've picked up the old. Let the old go. Put on the new. If that's you this morning, I'm just going to invite you to say a prayer. Nothing I say is special. These aren't magical words. It's just words recognizing what God has already done for us and saying, God, that's what I want in my life. I'm ready for a new year and a new me. Because every year I try. And I do good for a few weeks. And then I fail. I'm done failing, God. If that's you this morning, I'm going to ask every head to be bowed, every eye closed. If that's you, would you just say this prayer with me? You don't have to say it out loud. I don't want to embarrass you. The words here aren't important. The posture of your heart is. Are you willing in this moment to invite God in and say, God, do something in me that I've tried for years, for decades, and I haven't been able to quite figure out? If that's you, just say this. Heavenly Father, Lord, I know, God, I've made mistakes all through my life. And I've tried hard to fix them, but it never feels like it actually does. So this morning, I trust you. Will you fix my mistakes? Will you forgive me of my sins? I believe that Jesus is your Son and that he paid a steep price for my forgiveness. And I accept that gift this morning. Would you take away the old? And Lord, right now, would you make all things new? In Jesus' name.